WWE Survivor Series is this Sunday from the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Once again, I believe for the third year in a row. It is Raw versus Smackdown. I don't believe that was the original plan for this show. In fact, Vince McMahon did not want Roman Reigns going one-on-one with AJ Styles. But once Roman got sick and surrendered the championship, that changed all of the plans for this show, and they decided to just go with the Raw versus SmackDown theme again, and I suspect this card would look very, very different had certain events not occurred over the last few weeks, including this past Monday. But here we are, the second of two big WWE shows this weekend. As usual, it'll be NXT competing against the main roster. NXT usually wins out in these battles. But there are some big matches on the card here, so let's start from the beginning. We know at least one of the kickoff matches that has been announced already. It will be a traditional Survivor Series elimination match with all of the tag teams. And representing Raw, we've got Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, the Ascension. Ugh. Well, at least this time they're on the same side. I suppose that's a little bit different than what they've been doing. Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, the Ascension, the Revival, the Lucha House Party, and the B-Team. Taking on Team Smackdown, captained by the Usos, along with the New Day, Anderson and Gallows, Sanity, and the Colognes. Wow. Pay-per-view match here with the Ascension and the Colognes. What an epic battle. I can't imagine why this is on the kickoff show. On Raw, Roode and Gable won a tag team battle royal to determine who the team captains would be. This was completely pointless because what the hell does that even mean anyway, team captains? I mean, do they get bonused or something for being the captains? This wasn't explained. Most of the teams, by the way, who lost in that battle royal they did on Monday night ended up on the team anyway. So they're not the captain, but like I said, what the hell does that even mean? The only way Roode and Gable as captains really means anything is if Gable gets them, let's say, eliminated, he costs his team, accidentally costs him the match. Because what that I would suspect that would do is bring us one step closer, hopefully, to Bobby Roode turning heel, which he so desperately needs to do. And so that at least would make sense. And I think that's probably what's going to happen here. I don't know. I'm not saying he's going to turn, Sunday night in LA, but certainly this could be the next step in that process. And then the turn happens either the next night or sometime in the next few weeks. So I'm picking Team SmackDown here. I think it's the Usos, the New Day, Anderson and Gallows, the Colognes, and Sanity picking up the W. We have Buddy Murphy defending the Cruiserweight Championship against Mustafa Ali. Would not at all be surprised if this thing also gets added to the kickoff show. This could be the sleeper match of the weekend. And you look at that NXT card and some of the incredible matches on there. Don't sleep on this match. I don't get to watch 205 Live as much as I'd like to. But these are two of the very best they have on that roster. And if they get, more than 7 or 8 minutes, they can go out there and potentially, I don't want to say steal the show, but they could go out there and have a hell of a match. That said, I don't see Buddy Murphy losing the championship so soon after he won it. He won it in Australia last month. It's only been about 6 weeks. I say keep it on him. Mustafa Ali can win it at some point down the road, so I'm picking Buddy Murphy. We have the Raw Tag Team Champions, AOP, taking on the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, Sheamus and Cesaro. Should be a pretty snug match, given who's involved. I don't see any reason to beat AOP. And so I'm picking them to win. So that'll be 1 for Raw. We've got the SmackDown Elimination Women's match. Team Raw, captained by Alexa Bliss, out of action with a concussion. Apparently she suffered multiple concussions recently, which is very concerning. It's one of the reasons why Corey Graves is now sitting at the announce desk and he's not wrestling anymore. But Alexa Bliss will captain her team from the sidelines, and that team will consist of Mickie James, Tamina, Nia the Destroyer, Natalya, and Ruby Riott. All heels and one babyface. They take on Team SmackDown, which was to be captained originally by Charlotte Flair, but now is being captained by a mystery person, as yet to be determined. That person will team with Asuka, Naomi, Carmella, and Sonya Deville. And here it's the opposite. It's all babyfaces and one heel. And as far as who the mystery person might be, I'm guessing Mandy Rose, given she felt slighted a few weeks ago on TV. She came out and cut a promo and everybody felt slighted that Sonya was in the match and not her. So I'm going to guess Mandy Rose. If I had to pick a dark horse pick, Nikki Cross. We saw Nikki Cross on television make her SmackDown debut a couple weeks ago. I don't necessarily, I said this on the podcast, I don't think that means that she's full-time on the main roster. Because it could have just been a special thing they did in the UK. But she did make her SmackDown debut, and if they wanted to just put her on the main roster, that would be one way to do it, have her come out as the mystery person. Now, they had a match. Now, by the way, I'm picking Team SmackDown here. So I'm going with Asuka, Naomi, Carmella, Sonya, and whoever the mystery woman is. They had a match on Monday night. A singles match between Sasha Banks and Bayley to determine the final spot on Team Raw. And it ended when the other members of the team interfered and beat them both up, which is what paved the way for Alexa to just go ahead and announce that, hey, Ruby Riott will be on the team. So the match meant nothing. More important than that, and this is incredible to me, it means no Sasha and no Bayley at Survivor Series. I guess I shouldn't be shocked. This has been quite the banner year for those two, hasn't it? What a year it's been for Sasha Banks and Bayley. When Sasha leaves, I look forward to the inevitable Sasha Banks-Tessa Blanchard match. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll get it at some point next year. It's funny, too, because when I look at this, there's a lot of people who aren't on this card. This is not something that is reserved just to Sasha and Bayley. Randy Orton, not on the show. AJ Styles, no match. Ember Moon, she's another one. No Ember Moon at Survivor Series. She lost yet again last Monday night, this time to Tamina, after losing 2 weeks in a row to Nia Jax, which is just disgraceful. The same Nia Jax that she apparently idolized on her way up in the business. That is what Michael Cole said on Monday Night Raw. Multiple times, in fact, not just once. Multiple times, Michael Cole informed us that Nia Jax was this great inspiration, apparently, to Ember Moon. Ember idolized her. I wonder if she still feels that way after the end of Raw. Imagine having Ember Moon job to Tamina Snuka while Michael Cole tells us about how Ember idolized Nia Jax. I'm convinced that a troll face runs this company. I'm sure you've all seen that troll face meme. That's Vince McMahon. Remember back in the early 90s? Those of us old enough to remember Mortal Kombat 2. Remember when Mortal Kombat 2 hit the arcades and first came out? There was a little Easter egg when you would hit a big move. This guy's face, some random white dude, his face would pop out from the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Remember that? It would be very quick. It would last maybe all of 2 seconds. His face would pop out, and he would yell, "Toasty!" Remember that? He would yell, "Toasty," and then he would disappear. Whenever they troll us in some way on this show, they ought to have Vince McMahon's face just pop out from the corner of the screen and just yell, "Fuck you," and then disappear. Ember made her debut almost a decade before Nia Jax woke up and realized that she wanted to play wrestler. In fact, the same year that Ember debuted is the year that Nia debuted. Nia debuted the same year that Ember finally signed with WWE. Not that Ember debuted the same year, but the year she finally signed that big contract with WWE is the year that Nia first broke into the business. So, unless Ember Moon idolized Nia Jax from her modeling days, that was a pretty stupid thing for him to say. We have the men's Survivor Series elimination match, Team Raw, captained by Baron Corbin, who, like Alexa, will not be competing. Thank God. This team is comprised of Bobby Lashley, Finn Balor, Braun Strowman, Dolph Ziggler, and Drew McIntyre. They take on Team Smackdown, now with The Miz as the sole captain, with Daniel Bryan being out of the match. He teams up with Rey Mysterio, Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy, and Shane McMahon. So this is an interesting match. How do you play this out, right? What is the ideal finish to this match? If it were me, the way that they've been really going hard with McIntyre lately, and boy, did they put him over strong a couple of weeks ago over Kurt Angle. So much so, in fact, that Kurt was basically bounced off the Survivor Series card. He was originally supposed to be on the Survivor Series card, and I guess when they did what they did that Monday night on Raw, where McIntyre basically embarrassed him, they made the decision not to include him in the Survivor Series card, which is fine with me. I mean, all due respect to Kurt, I'm sure we haven't seen his final match, but I'm not exactly clamoring to see him wrestling on every pay-per-view. But yeah, and again, this is, I think, one of the victims of the Roman Reigns, leave of absence and all that. What was originally not supposed to be Raw versus SmackDown was probably going to give us Team Corbin against Team Angle for control of Raw. At least that seems to be where it was going. That's what some of the rumors had indicated. And that certainly seemed like the direction. And then again, things just got blown up. So I wouldn't be surprised if that match became a casualty of just all of the different events that have taken place here. What do you do here? Ideally, I think McIntyre would be the sole survivor. I would have it come down to Drew McIntyre on the Raw side and either Jeff Hardy on the SmackDown side or Rey Mysterio. And in the end, McIntyre would win. Now, there is another way that they could go with this. If they wanted to sort of get the gears going for an eventual McIntyre-Dolph Ziggler split, just borrow a page from another Survivor Series show from 1994. Shawn Michaels accidentally superkicked Diesel right in the face, and then they split up. I mean, Dolph Ziggler is basically modeling himself as a carbon copy of what Shawn Michaels was, right down to the superkick finish. You could literally do the exact finish if you wanted to. I wouldn't do it the exact same way. I wouldn't have Drew then turn around and win the championship 3 days later at Madison Square Garden, like they did with Diesel. But you can do a similar type of angle here, that is if Drew gets eliminated, then that would be okay too, only because they're furthering that story. So there's a couple of different ways. Well, there's more than a couple. I mean, knowing WWE, they'll have Shane McMahon be the sole survivor. After all, Shane McMahon is the best in the world. Got to give that young guy a push. Hopefully Drew is the last man standing. By the way, what the hell was Bobby Lashley doing, bending over and smacking his own ass on Monday? This is what they have this guy doing now? I mean, I know WWE likes to bend all of us over every Monday night, but I don't need to be seeing Bobby Lashley's rear end. So hopefully that was a one-week thing. We have the Intercontinental Champion, Seth Rollins, taking on the United States Champion, Shinsuke Nakamura, another Raw versus SmackDown match. I do think that Dean Ambrose will end up rearing his head in some way, and that will cost Seth Rollins the match, so I'm picking Shinsuke Nakamura. Did I give my prediction for the last match? I did, right? Yes, Raw. Obviously, if I'm pitching Drew McIntyre to be the last man standing, I'm picking Team Raw in the men's match. Just making sure. I'm just making sure. So yeah, here with Rollins and Nakamura, I think SmackDown gets the win. I'm going to go with Nakamura. I saw a good deal of hate online for the Dean Ambrose promo on Raw Monday night where he was sitting on the hood of that car in the parking lot with a burning trash can next to him. I didn't think it was that bad. I'm not really sure where all the hate that I saw, anyway, was coming from. I'm not really sure what people were so bothered about. It wasn't great. I'm not going to say that it was some fantastic promo or anything. But I didn't think it was as bad as some people were making it out to be. He did say that, hey, maybe Seth is wondering if he shouldn't have talked to him like he was an imbecile, or maybe he's been this guy all along, and Seth just was too full of himself to notice. He said the Shield made him weak, and he tossed his flak jacket into the fire. Michael Cole asked Renee Young, about her husband after that. She didn't really have a whole lot to say. And, I watch this and I just think to myself, if you really want to get real, genuine heel heat on Dean Ambrose, and Ambrose is already getting good heat because people like Seth Rollins. See, it's amazing what happens when you put a babyface in there that people actually like and want to get behind. They boo the other person. So it's not like he's not getting heel heat, but if you really want to ratchet things up and get this guy some heat, he should punch Becky Lynch in the face. No, I'm just kidding. No, what they should do is you got to have at some point Renee Young confront her husband on television. How many times can Michael Cole sit at the announce booth and ask Renee, hey, what's going on with Dean? and she's going to have a non-answer. You would think at some point she's going to get fed up with it, and she's going to try to get some answers out of him. So you do an angle, again, I don't know when you do this, but soon on television, you do this angle where, whether it's backstage, she kind of gets up from the announce desk and puts her headset down and goes to the back to find him, or maybe he's doing something nefarious, and she's had enough, and she just feels compelled to go, talk to him and try to calm him down, so she goes into the ring where he is, however you want to do it. But she gets up from the desk and she confronts her husband and says, "What's gotten into you? This is not the Dean Ambrose that I know." And he then gets up in her face, gets real angry at her, does something or says something to make her cry. When Seth Rollins makes the save, you get this giant brawl that breaks out. You make Renee Young cry, I guarantee you're going to have people taking a hit out on your ass. Okay, that's one way to get people riled up and pissed off at you. People know they're together. They're openly acknowledging it on television. It's not like it's some big secret. I think to do one angle like that would really put Ambrose over as this despicable heel, which is something I'd like to see them try. We have the new WWE champion, Daniel Bryan. Still sounds weird saying that, but Daniel Bryan, for the first time ever, will be taking on the Raw Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar. We had Brock Lesnar on TV Monday night also, in the ring with Jinder Mahal and the Singh brothers, meditating with Jinder and doing his Shanti mantra. If he does that before his next UFC fight, I guarantee you he beats Cormier. So, of course, he destroyed Jinder, and he laid waste to the Singh brothers. That first release German suplex that he gave one of the Singh brothers, I forget which one, this fucker landed right on his knee. He got folded up. When I say that he got folded up, I'm not even doing it justice. This guy's got to have a neck like Gumby. I thought this guy was dead. The other ones didn't look as bad, although I'm sure they weren't pleasant. But that first one, for all this talk about Nia Jax being reckless, and she was, Brock seems to actually take glee in it. He's got a smile on his face. Probably gets a tingle up his leg. But this is a match that I thought we'd never see. This is a match that I was pitching hard, man, 4 or 5 years ago. In the months before WrestleMania 30, I remember writing a column about the whole thing, pushing the whole David versus Goliath angle. And of course, you also, for all the people who were excited and wanted to see that match, you had an equal number of people online who said, you're crazy, you're a mark, you're this, you're that. I can't take a match like that seriously. Probably the same people who were, getting into the CM Punk Brock Lesnar match at SummerSlam all those years ago. Although maybe not. Maybe they felt the same way about the Punk match too. But I'll tell you what, that match turned out to be one of the best matches all year in 2013. And that match really, more than anything, showed me that a Daniel Bryan-Brock Lesnar match could absolutely work. Especially Bryan, is a submission guy. He knows a lot of submission holds. Yeah, he's a smaller guy, and he could be a frustrating opponent, I think, for Brock Lesnar. But that was the whole dynamic I was looking forward to. David versus Goliath. Of course, I had visions in my head of him tapping out Brock Lesnar at the end of WrestleMania, which I'm sure just would drive people absolutely insane. But, hey, Batista did the honors instead. Batista tapped out to Daniel Bryan, and it made for a great WrestleMania moment. I wish, in light of what they did this week on television, I really wish they would have waited a week for the heel turn. They could have had Bryan win the championship, but I wish they would have waited a week and did the heel turn after the pay-per-view. So that way, going into this show, we can get babyface Daniel Bryan. No ambiguity about it. I mean, you still have people cheering him probably at the pay-per-view, but now, one of my fears is that people aren't going to know who to cheer for or what to do. They like AJ Styles. They're going to boo Daniel Bryan because of what he did on Tuesday, but they don't necessarily like Brock. After all those months that this company spent trying to force this idea into our head that, hey, Brock doesn't care about you. He doesn't show up for work. He doesn't even watch the show. Remember that? That was how they built their WrestleMania main event this year. They literally built up their WrestleMania main event with their champion as this guy who didn't want to be there. He didn't want to work. He didn't care about the title. He didn't care about the company. He didn't care about anybody or anything but himself. That was the angle going into WrestleMania. So I could see where some people in light of this heel turn, could be conflicted going into this match. But that being said, I am still looking forward to this. I think it's four or 5 years too late, but I am looking forward to this match. I hope they don't just go with what their original plan supposedly was for SummerSlam back in 2014, which was Brock Lesnar squashing Daniel Bryan like a bug, squashing him the way that he did John Cena. John Cena was the one who got squashed instead because Bryan was hurt. Now, my issue with it now isn't just that I personally would like to see at least a semi-competitive match. More importantly than that, Bryan is the WWE champion. Now, I know they haven't really even pretended that the WWE title is on the same level as the Universal title. We all know who the little bastard child is in that relationship. But, I also don't want them to treat the championship like gum on the bottom of Brock's boot. This has to be at least somewhat competitive. But the reality is Brock Lesnar is not being pinned by Daniel Bryan. Brock Lesnar is not being submitted by Daniel Bryan. AJ Styles, as of now, has no match on this show. He has no role. It would not make much sense. It would not have made any sense to make this a triple threat match, although I think that could have been an awesome match. You're not going to have 2 SmackDown guys in there against 1 Raw guy. You could argue that if you fuse AJ Styles together with Daniel Bryan as some sort of machine, it might then be a fair fight against Brock Lesnar. I do think we see AJ get involved. Just because he's got no match doesn't mean we're not going to see Styles on this show. I think he gets involved, and either he causes the disqualification, or he costs Bryan the loss, distracts him or whatever, and Bryan ends up getting F5'd and pinned. So Daniel Bryan could very well win this match, but he would win by DQ, because AJ Styles just runs in and kicks him in the balls to return the favor for what Bryan did to him. So technically then Bryan would win, but he could very easily just be F5'd and pinned. Either way, Brock Lesnar wins this match. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then Lesnar just probably ends up killing them both. Would not be surprised if he lays both guys out. But Brock Lesnar is your winner. And finally, with the man down with a broken face, it will now be Charlotte Flair replacing Becky Lynch, representing SmackDown Live, taking on the Raw Women's Champion Rowdy Ronda Rousey. First time ever, Ronda and Charlotte, a match that we thought we might see at WrestleMania. Now we get it on 5 days' notice. But it really was, honestly, of all the options. Asuka versus Rousey could still be a match that you do at some point. Even I, as an Asuka fan, look at the way she's been used and just say Asuka and Rousey, it was not the best option. The best option for this show was the person they chose, and that would be Charlotte. And that's still a big match. It's a match we've not seen before. Clearly, Charlotte is sort of the chosen one when it comes to the women. Ronda, in a lot of ways, is the other chosen one. And so it's a big match. I would love it. I'll tell you what, it definitely beats another Ronda Rousey, Nikki Bella match. I think we could all agree on that. Although the Bella Army, I suppose, would disagree. I don't want to incur the wrath of the Bella Army, so I'll leave well enough alone here. But I would love it if Becky was ringside for this. In a perfect world, she'd be at ringside, and she would end up running in and just beating the hell out of both of them. So that little hug that she gave Charlotte on Tuesday, which looked very awkward, probably because I'm guessing it was kind of an unscripted moment between the two of them. Still weird, given how much they were feuding and all the kind of harsh things that Becky said about her on television, called her a bitch and all this other stuff. It would explain the hug away, at least, as some sort of, I guess like a swerve of sorts, if she just beat up Charlotte and then also beat up Ronda and left them both laying. I'd like to see that, but if she's concussed, which apparently she is, she's not getting cleared to do anything physical. I don't even know that she'll be there. I don't know for a fact that she'll be there. So I don't see her physically getting involved here, because she probably won't be allowed. And so what do you do for a finish? I say that Ronda Rousey taps out Charlotte cleanly in a fair fight with the armbar. Ronda wins. She beats Nia Jax in their championship match next month, probably at TLC. Becky comes back. Becky eliminates Nia to win the Royal Rumble. She chooses Becky as her opponent, and there's your WrestleMania main event. That is the way that this should play out. And so overall, if you go by all the picks I made here, that gives Raw 4 wins to SmackDown's 3. So Monday Night Raw would win the overall battle this year at Survivor Series. That would be my final score. By the way, the Rousey promo on Raw Monday Night, I did want to just mention this really quickly. Rousey did a promo, and I saw a mixture of, man, that was great, and man, that sucked. And the reason I think people said that it sucked, and I didn't see, too much hate for it, but the hate that I did see centered around this line during the promo that irked me as well. And it was the part where she called Becky, "You're not just the man, you're the millennial man." And then she was explaining, I guess, the stereotypes for, millennial men and all that. But she talked about, your avocado toast. And this, when I first heard it, this just screamed Vince McMahon to me. Especially given that Vince McMahon is the person who sat across once upon a time on the network from Stone Cold Steve Austin on his podcast and basically roasted the current roster. He basically said, the one reason the current roster is not as ambitious as the roster that Stone Cold was a part of back in the day is because today they're all full of millennials. So that was my first thought. And maybe Vince did have some degree of input into it, but according to Ronda herself, Paul Heyman is the one who's been helping her out on her promos. He's been working with her on promos. And look, I don't care if it was Paul Heyman or if it wasn't Paul Heyman. If it was, whoever came up with that line, it was still stupid. It was a dumb line. And she's still using it on Instagram. I hope that this doesn't become sort of her go-to line, her go-to insult for Becky Lynch. If that's her go-to insult against Becky, she will lose. Whatever promo battle back and forth she has with Becky Lynch, I promise you, she will lose. I do like, though, the idea that Paul Heyman would be working closely with Ronda on her promos. Obviously, Heyman is far more hit than miss. And especially if the goal is to build to a WrestleMania match between Becky and Ronda, because this thing, let's be honest, if that's going to be the big match, and they're going to be doing all this media going into the show and interviews, this thing is going to live or die based on their promos and their trash talking. And I could think of no one better than Paul Heyman who I would like to have helping me when it comes to that sort of stuff. So on the whole, I think it's a plus, but that whole avocado toast millennial man bullshit has just got to go. So that's the lineup, pending any changes that might take place after I record this here. But that is your lineup for Survivor Series this weekend. As always, I will have a full review of the show that goes up very early Monday morning on the YouTube channel. I'll be adding this audio to the podcast that I record on Sunday when I put the whole thing together. I'll make sure that these predictions are a part of that audio as well. That'll be episode 573. There is a ton of stuff to talk about still on this whole Becky, Nia situation. Far more than I even talked about in the extra I did a few days ago. There's been more news since then, and I've got some reactions to some things that people have said about it, and so we'll get into all of that this weekend. It's going to be a big podcast, going to be a big weekend. Keep it locked in right here to the YouTube channel. Please hit that sub button. If you have not already done so, give this a thumbs up. And I will see you back here for the Sound Off and again for the Survivor Series and NXT reviews this weekend. Take care, guys.